LoreWarrior Vehicles. Coolant trucks. Class 135-K Curita model. Overview. Coolant trucks, better known as coolers among mech warriors, station themselves close to the battlefield where they can be hooked up to the overheated mechs for the purpose of flushing away the excess heat with super cold liquid nitrogen. The coolant truck was first developed during the Reunification War, when Star League sought to extend its control over worlds in the periphery. The need for a battlefield device able to provide quick cooling for overheating mechs became especially apparent during this period because so many of the periphery worlds were water poor. Though the Star League's mechs were superior to the periphery troops, Star League lost several battles before the development of coolant trucks simply because the periphery armies were able to exhaust the Star League mechs with unrelenting attack. The first coolant trucks appeared on the battlefield in 2588, participating in the Siege of Cerberus, a world in the Outworlds Alliance. As the planet was a desert world, the coolant trucks more than doubled the range of the League's mechs, and since that time, coolant trucks have been an important part of many mech armies. Capabilities. The Class 135K coolant truck was built for the Draconis Combine by Buddha Imperial Vehicles, a small company on the planet Buddha. It differs from the coolant trucks used by other houses only in its choice of weapons and its coolant capacity. Codenamed the Lifesaver, the 135K carries 9 ton of coolant, 7 ton of liquid nitrogen, and 2 ton of liquid oxygen in armoured tanks kept cold with small recirculation motors. The motors also stir the tank's contents to prevent dangerous temperature gradients that might rupture the tanks. A mech has 2 uses for liquid nitrogen. The first is as a coolant for reactors. In most mechs, a twin-jacketed fusion core is insulated by a surrounding reservoir of liquid nitrogen. This nitrogen reserve is kept in constant circulation to keep the heat of the reactor within performance norms. As the mech exerts more energy, its heat rises, which causes the liquid nitrogen to expand to dangerous pressures. Sensing this rise in pressure, the control system will then vent a portion of the nitrogen into the air until the pressure falls. If a pilot is forced to do this several times, his mech is also losing precious coolant in the process. To prevent a shutdown or an explosion, the mech warrior of a severely overheating mech will retire from the battle and move to the coolers standing by. Once attached to the truck, all the lukewarm nitrogen is flushed from the mech's reservoir and replaced with cold nitrogen. A battle mech also uses nitrogen to cool other parts. By diverting a portion of the liquid nitrogen through tubes called arteries, the liquid is spread throughout the mech's structure. In this way, it cools other hotspots that may occur at various actuators in the missile system, and so forth. Coolant trucks also carry liquid oxygen, which is used to replenish the small jump jet tanks. The pure oxygen is used to supplement the normal air passing over the hot reactor, creating the jet propulsion. Liquid oxygen can also be pumped through the mech's artery system to cool burning joints. However, as oxygen is more volatile than nitrogen, it's used for coolant only, if the cooler's nitrogen supply is exhausted. The Lifesaver coolant truck has the added feature of 2 turret-mounted flamers. Though seldom used, they are functional weapons. Because of a cooler's limitless supply of coolant and liquid oxygen to make the fuel burn more furiously, the gunner on a coolant truck can fire at will without the normal worries about heat build-up. If approached by a mech either in flames or on the verge of exploding, the truck's 2 flamers are quickly converted. Now, instead of liquid oxygen igniting the fuel, the flamers will spew liquid nitrogen onto the wounded mech, dousing the flames and cooling the mech off in a cloud of supercool mist. Noting this ingenious use of flamers, the Federated Suns has removed the usual lasers from the turrets of their trucks and replaced them with simple, convertible flamers. Most coolers have slightly more armour than might be expected for a non-combat vehicle. The protection has been added because a single laser bolt or a hot piece of flying metal would explode the truck's volatile cargo. The Lifesaver has 5 receptacles for the long rubber plastic hoses used for the attachment to overheating mechs. The first 4 dispense liquid nitrogen, while the 5th contains the oxygen. Most mechs have hookup points for just 1 hose, but heavy mechs require 2 for cooling. Battle history. As coolant trucks are attached to regimental maintenance, they are under the control of the Master Tech. A single, well-maintained regiment will usually have about 6 coolers. Unless the Master Tech feels one battalion is going to face a particularly rough time, the trucks are usually divided into groups of 2 for each battalion. During battle, one will be actively cooling mechs while the other is refilling tanks at a depot to the rear. In this way, an overheating mech will almost always have access to a ready cooler. Slowly following an advance, coolant trucks and their 6-man teams sometimes face enemy fire. Teams consist of a driver, a gunner, and 4 hosemen. Assignment to a cooler team isn't particularly popular though. yet the better teams do take a certain pride in their work. Mech warriors often call them Icemen for their stoical behaviour in carrying out their work as the battle swirls around them. Coolant trucks are valued as prizes. If a cooler and its team are captured intact, they'll usually be offered a chance to work for their captors. Mercenary units are always on the lookout for seasoned teams, and have been known to offer them a share of the unit's booty equal to what the two techs would earn. Failing to win over a team, the capturing side might then offer them up in exchange for some of their own captured personnel. Mechs are especially vulnerable when hooked up to coolers. After the collapse of the Star League, however, a new battlefield etiquette evolved which extended special courtesies to cooler-hooked mechs. The enemy will usually ignore that mech that's hooked to a cooler as long as it doesn't shoot. Once the mech is disconnected and moved a few meters from the truck, it becomes fair game once more. Variants. Many types of coolant trucks exist. Some are hovercraft, others are tracked. Most carry the two supercooled liquids, though some may carry only liquid nitrogen and leave it to other coolers to bring the liquid oxygen. Coolant trucks are usually armed, sometimes with a combination of weapons. Others have no weaponry. Every house is currently studying the installation of dual-purpose flamers that the Lifesaver uses so effectively.